I don't want to harp on too much about the wokeness aspect of the MCU in its current form because I think we've addressed that sufficiently for now, and many other content creators have gone into even greater detail about it than I have. In this video, I specifically wanted to tackle what the Marvel Cinematic Universe has lost since the Infinity Saga ended in 2019's Endgame. The final climactic battle with Thanos, in which the series' main protagonist, Tony Stark, died, and primary star Robert Downey Jr. left the series, along with Chris Evans, who played Steve Rogers, Captain America, of course. The MCU began back in 2008 with the first Iron Man film, which reignited RDJ's career and, of course, made the Iron Man character a household name. Prior to that, the character was nowhere near as well known as the likes of other popular superheroes like Batman, Spider-Man, Superman, or the X-Men, for example. The film would stand on its own as a very good superhero movie by itself, but also it would serve as the first chapter in what would eventually become the biggest film and television franchise ever created. Of course, the lore of the characters and the world they operate in had been established in the comic books, but this would be the first time that many of these characters would be presented on screen in a live-action format. And in that early Phase 1 era, there was a real sense of anticipation at the prospect of these first 5 films, Iron Man, The Incredible Hulk, Iron Man 2, Thor, and Captain America the First Avenger, that they were all leading towards something significant. A major cinematic crossover film in the 6th installment of Phase 1, 2012's The Avengers. And because Iron Man, Thor, Hulk, and Captain America had been established in their own feature films prior to The Avengers, it made that film so much more special. Seeing the characters meet on screen, interact, and even fight each other was quite a novelty, and it was all very exciting for the fans. And the events of that first Avengers movie would then have major consequences for subsequent Phase 2 films, which just further served to add more layers and complexity to the universe. Phase 2 would give us Iron Man 3, Thor the Dark World, Captain America the Winter Soldier, Guardians of the Galaxy, Avengers Age of Ultron, and Ant-Man. Age of Ultron being the second major crossover movie. And throughout this entire period, the whole story arc with Thanos and the Infinity Stones was being slowly established, which was leading towards a major showdown in Phase 3. So again, there was huge anticipation for where this was all leading and how it was going to unfold. Among fan circles, you could really get a palpable sense of the energy and excitement about where the MCU was headed. Each new installment added more intrigue and new elements and characters, and the quality of each film was pretty high and consistent. Phase 3 gave us Captain America Civil War, which crossed over so many of the characters that it essentially served as another Avengers film. There was also the first Doctor Strange film, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, Spider-Man Homecoming, Thor Ragnarok, Black Panther, Avengers Infinity War, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Captain Marvel, Avengers Endgame, and Spider-Man Far From Home, which really served as an epilogue to the Infinity Saga, explaining how the world changed after the blip and the events of Endgame, and especially paying tribute to Peter Parker's mentor, Tony Stark. But I think it was at this point when the MCU lost direction. Although the MCU had plenty of strong characters capable of leading their own individual standalone films, few of them would be as capable as Tony Stark was to lead the franchise. Ultimately, the core 6 Avengers characters led by Stark were the center of the franchise, and not only did the MCU lose him in Endgame, but also the primary story arc with Thanos came to a conclusion. Phase 4 would not only insert more unpopular current year woke politics, but it would also radically change in its structure, producing feature films and TV series simultaneously. The 7 feature films were Black Widow, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, Eternals, Spider-Man No Way Home, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, Thor Love and Thunder, and Black Panther Wakanda Forever. And the new TV series for the Disney Plus streaming service were WandaVision, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Loki, What If, Hawkeye, Moon Knight, Miss Marvel, and She-Hulk, Attorney at Law, which fans are just loving at the moment. At the time of making this video, Black Panther Wakanda Forever has not yet been released, but from the looks of the trailer I wouldn't have especially high hopes. Nevertheless, with the exception of Spider-Man No Way Home, the rest of the films were pretty average to poor. And the less said about some of the TV series, the better. Phase 4 is unaffectionately referred to by many fans as the MCU, focusing on emasculating feminist identity politics. But regardless, the quality of the overall MCU product has declined drastically, perhaps as a result not only of poor creative choices, but also because of franchise fatigue and the lack of direction. Because there's no longer one central overarching story arc and villain, the MCU has begun to feel a bit rudderless and lacking in purpose. The productions we've gotten throughout Phase 4 feel like the producers have just been throwing all sorts of ideas at the wall to see what sticks, without any unifying end goal in mind. From 2008 to 2019, the MCU was essentially a hit machine, one solid film after the other, with one or two exceptions, of course. Now, a quality MCU film or TV show feels like the exception rather than the rule. I'm not convinced the MCU can ever truly return to its former glory days of the first 3 phases. Even if the woke agendas were to be jettisoned, the series has already done the massively spectacular big epic showdown thing with Endgame. That was the big centerpiece moment of the franchise. How do you top that? How do they maintain audience interest after the big earth-shattering moment that the entire series was moving towards? Thanos was defeated, and the franchise is now essentially categorized as the MCU before Endgame and the MCU after Endgame. Phase 5 will give us the 3rd Ant-Man film, the 3rd Guardians of the Galaxy film, the Marvels, Blade, Captain America, New World Order, and the Thunderbolts. Phase 6 will see Deadpool's first MCU outing, along with the Fantastic Four, and 2 more Avengers films. But can they ever make as much of an impact as the films in the first 3 phases did, especially now that many of the core Avengers are no longer in the series? Now, it's possible that the MCU can recover somewhat if it can reinvent itself and develop a new central plot that's just as compelling as the Infinity Saga. But the problem is, how do you top the Infinity Saga? It was about as explosive, gargantuan, galactic, and monumental as a superhero story conclusion can get. There's only so many times the world, and indeed the entire universe, can hang in the balance. There's only so many times the stakes can be so high before it becomes exhausting and no longer meaningful or exciting. The next massive expensive CGI superhero battle just no longer makes the same impact. For many people, the MCU spiritually concluded with Endgame. Now it's just coasting on its past glories. When Tony Stark finally got his hands on the Infinity Stones and snapped his fingers, I think he ended more than just Thanos and the Infinity Saga. So that about does it for today's video, guys. If you'd like to support my work, head on over to the How Is This a Thing Teespring store and pick up one of these mugs with channel art designed by the very talented Brian Martinez. There's lots of cool designs to choose from. The link is in the description box below. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.